Okay, we're back after a week where both of us were flirting with IR. Missing last week's episode. I know there were a couple of people that were disappointed that we didn't get to record. So were we. Life sort of got in the way, but we are back, and everybody's asking the same question: why can't you be more like Kevin Stefanski? Which I'm certainly enjoying, but since we didn't really get to talk about the Bears game, and we obviously or the Jacksonville Jaguars game, and we still have the Bears game. There were a couple things that sort of permeated both. One of which was the fact that obviously the Browns won both games, but coming out of the Jags game, we saw Myles Garrett and then Juan Thornhill via Twitter were two of the people that were just basically talking about how well Kevin Stefanski is coaching and some of those things. And then what we've seen lately, the last couple of weeks, I think last week with the fourth win by four different quarterbacks this year, we've entered this thing where the media is desperately, it's like adorable in a certain respect. The media desperately wants Kevin Stefanski to spike the football, and he just refuses. He's always deflecting to the team and everything else. And staying on message no matter what people try to do. There was some more of that. We're recording this on Monday. Some more of that today with some of the stuff they were able to do. And then, lo and behold, I think his name is Zach Rosenblatt, tweeted out his lead to his article criticizing New York Jets head coach Robert Saleh, and basically saying, why do the Jets suck when Kevin Stefanski is able to do all of these things? Why can't we be more like Kevin Stefanski and the Browns? So I'm curious, as somebody who's been a supporter, a fan, we've been sort of wanting this to happen for Kevin Stefanski. What is your feeling on this?
Well, I, for one, love it because I've been a huge supporter of Kevin Stefanski through the ups and downs, if you will. And that's the thing about having an even-keeled coach, though, that doesn't really give you a ton of stuff because either way, it can kind of be used against him. And I like the fact that he is very true to who he is. He is very, I don't know if calculated is the right word, but he knows how to say things without saying too much. And the fact that it all comes back to the players and the coaching staff, regardless of if it's, well, I should correct myself. He gives all the praise and glory to the coaching staff and the players when things are going well. And he tends to shoulder the brunt of the criticism to point his finger back at him. And that's how it should be, right? He doesn't want any of this speculation or anything to be taken and ran with and narratives being created in the media if he is doing the same thing every single time. And that really seems to be who he is. And this should come as no surprise because this is what we've been given in the last 3 years. This is him.
Yeah, I think his stoicism really paid off this past week. People criticize him because he's not a naturally emotional guy, although
he's been more emotional.
Everybody loved that 4th and 3 play where you see him on the sideline, like jogging up the field to celebrate
right.
Joe Flacco. Like he's
emoting. He was emoting yesterday in the first quarter, and it was only like 8 minutes that had went by, and there was an emoting Kevin Stefanski. Like he's not fully robotic. There's some malfunctions.
Well, he uses emotion like when he feels like it's appropriate. So like the most emotional he gets is those post-game speeches, which I'm fairly sure he had one F-bomb for every win the Browns had on the season yesterday. But like the players love it. So like, look, he's
Can we pause there for a minute though? Because to me, that actually says a lot about how just his emotional intelligence overall, the fact that he is able to regulate his emotions in the moment, which that's really hard to do, Pete. I practice this all the time at my house, at work, to try to be able to teach my kids whose brains are still forming at a rapid rate of how to appropriately respond to certain things when things don't go their way, or they get upset, or they get mad, or they get injured. Again, I know that people get annoyed by it, but I actually think that is a really, really big benefit to having someone that is like that. Because when you get highly emotional in certain situations, then you actually can make wrong decisions or rash decisions. And you don't want your head coach to be reacting to just fight or flight mode. You want them to be thinking and making sound decisions because they're processing things very quickly and not letting the emotion get the best of him. So I just wanted to pause there and say that, because his stoicism, I believe, has been mostly criticized and taken in a negative light from what I've seen. And I just want to say that you guys should all look at it as a very, very positive thing that the Browns have.
Yes. I think this past week is a great example. It would be very easy for him to basically go, woe is me, why are all our guys getting hurt? And sending, the wrong message. Instead, he stays on task. And
What's his face?
In some ways, in some ways you can sort of look at it and go, well, that's kind of heartless that he's just sort of like, well, he's done for the year, next man up. But like, the players, it's not for us. It's for the players, and they get it, and that's who they expect him to be.
And that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely. Like I hate. In some ways, I sort of get it, but in other ways, I just don't. He's the head coach of the football team. He's not the head coach of the city. Like we've talked about this. Get a therapist. He's not here to make you feel better. If he wins, you're gonna love him. If you don't. If they don't, you don't. And like what has happened is he's winning is like that. Him being emotional has almost become. You remember Jimmy Johnson and like how his hair was a thing when the Cowboys were really good, and like his hair didn't move, and then they win the Super Bowl and they mess up his hair. Like there's an element. Look, he's not Jimmy Johnson, but there's an element of this getting him out of his. Getting him out of that buttoned up aspect of himself when it's appropriate. Like. Because they're doing well. And I do think that's sort of an endearing thing. And I think like, as we've seen sort of the media be sort of come to the conclusion that like, no, he's the head coach of this team. He's going to be here. I think they're playing into it a little bit. The players are playing into it a little bit, and the fans are enjoying it, which is great because it's all coming from the right place. Like then it becomes a fun quirk as opposed to he's failing because he's not doing what we want him to do to give him bonus. Like, no, he should call timeout, call my cell phone and explain to me why I shouldn't be angry about this. Like we have this weird mindset where like, that's sort of an aspect of this thing. And he's just got to do it. And to your point, like you don't want a guy making just, decisions out of anger or frustration or whatever, when like, it's fourth down. Do you then do something stupid because you're trying to make a point and win an argument as opposed to making the best decision for your team? And like, that is obviously Stefanski's goal and his overall sort of thought process with everything he does. What's going to do the best for the football team?
I was just saying, really based on the game yesterday too, it was a frustrating game to watch at some points. And then the fourth quarter was when things really got interesting and turned it around. But I had started to see the, I guess, fan base on Twitter, obviously reacting, overreacting, whatever you want to call it. And this is why people on Twitter do not coach this football team or make any type of decisions regarding this team, because Kevin Stefanski, once again, would have been fired had it been up to the fan base on how this game was going yesterday. So hindsight's really important, Pete. I know that's silly, but sometimes you just have to let things play out and really just trust that he's going to do the right thing and make the best decision at that moment in time. And I think that's really important to reiterate: the best decision at that point in time. It's really easy to be frustrated in the moment or be mad in the moment or be happy in the moment. Again, it all comes down to full picture and the end result. And the end result is that the Browns ended up winning that football game, and Kevin Stefanski was a big part of that.
Yeah, look, there were a number of things that I think you can say are Kevin Stefanski sort of his fingerprints are on this. The past two games, the Browns have won huge on fourth down. The Jacksonville game, they were 3 for 3 on fourth downs, conversions. They obviously kicked the super long field goal that secured the victory, and then they made a fourth down stop that kept that ended a drive for the Jags. And then this past week they only had the one fourth down call, but it was a big one because then they finished that drive with the touchdown. The DTR play, he comes in, he throws the quick pass to I think Kareem Hunt, and he picks up the first down, and you just keep going, and they scored. And like that was the thing last week. Two of those fourth down conversions last week then resulted in touchdowns. Like that was obviously something you and I talked about quite a bit in 2022, and sort of like, is this the right mindset? Should they be playing for field goals? And it's weird that like this year, the offense is way worse, and yet they're having more success in this aspect of the game. But it's been critical, and they've been able to do that. And like we talked about, what are they trying to do? Well, they want this mentality of like, this is who we are. We're always ready for the moment. And I think part of the reason they won that game, those two games, is that mentality. And then we carry it over. And I'm curious if you had the same reaction I did watching the Bears game in particular. I watched the Bears and I saw a lot of Browns teams on the other side of the field where the game got late. The Bears should have had total control of the game. They did a bunch of stuff to make their own mistakes. They just beat themselves in a lot of ways, and the Browns just didn't. And ultimately were able to make some plays and do it. Like the Amari Cooper touchdown play, you watch it.
Watching three guys just tackle air.
The entire Bears defense is looking at Joe Flacco in the backfield. They're not looking at Amari Cooper. Like that is stuff you would see the Browns do in past years. And like this veteran group that has sort of grown up with this is more focused on making the play. And like, I don't think the Bears have been in a lot of those moments where the Browns are obviously, in this every week. This is old hat at this point. Let's be ridiculous on each and every game where we're going to find some stupid way to win that makes no sense. And then I end up texting you, what even is this team on a weekly basis? But like those moments are huge where like they make the right play. And I think the Browns are a smarter football team than the Bears were in a lot of ways because they've done it, because they've been able to do this. And some of the fact is they have veterans. But like there were plays like, Joe Flacco for 3 quarters was horrendous in a lot of ways, but like the one play he made, the touchdown he threw to Njoku, was outstanding because like he and David Njoku have developed this very quick chemistry, and you saw it in the Jacksonville game where they get in the scramble drill and Njoku sort of sets him up and Flacco just hits him on the sideline. And it's like a nice play that converts the yardage and they keep the drive alive. But that is exactly the type of scenario that came up on the first touchdown pass. The play is over. Like the play is broken. Njoku is initially running like a little flat, and then he sort of tries to push the defender in the corner. And then with the defender like trying to take away his outside leverage, Njoku is sort of using that to leave some space on the inside, and Flacco throws the ball. The only guys who can see it are Njoku and Flacco. And Njoku, thankfully, makes the big catch, goes to the ground, and there's that spectacular photo of him on the ground where he's holding the ball like vice grips and his eyes are looking at the camera. It's like, it's tremendous. But
I don't know if you saw my comment, but he looks like my kid's Elf on the Shelf. Like his eyes are like wide open, kind of looking to the right a little bit. And he looked like he was up to no good.
But like, that was a play where that's the type of stuff. Like, let me be very clear. They are not Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, but that's the stuff that like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce have done for years and years and years, where it just becomes sort of like commonplace. And that was one of those plays you're like, no, that's just really smart football by two players who were able to make that play. So like, tremendous. It's a shame that so much of the rest of the half, or those 3 quarters, Flacco was really bad. And the Browns it's ridiculous. By my count, Luke Whippler coming in for the one play he did was the 12th lineman the Browns have had this year. Batonio's back locks up entirely, which I'm sure is not fun. I expect he'll be fine, but like just one of those things. I think his knee is contributing to that, but whatever. And so they're down to one starter and then just spare parts at points and just trying to figure this thing out. It limited everything. But like on top of that, just some of those throws were just really bad ideas. The first interception was Tillman's fault, I believe, expecting him to read the safety, and he didn't, to cut that in, and instead he keeps going vertical, and it goes right to the Bears defender, and they set up the first touchdown, which was an insane experience unto itself. The Browns had 13 players on the field twice, got called for DPI, and the Bears still took about 8 plays to get the yard. So you had that. Then you had the second interception, which Flacco it was a bad decision and a really bad throw. Like the Amari Cooper touchdown pass was like perfect, but like that's how, that's how small the room for error is on some of those throws where he's like a little off. He throws Tillman into the linebacker who just knocks him, with a good hit, that makes a good play, goes to the other backer, they intercept it and score. And then the third interception was just that the thing I keep noting is the team plays harder than the fan base cheers. Like I thought they were done on the third interception. When he just short armed the ball to Njoku. If he throws it deeper,
things were looking grim for me at that moment.
Like that was the point where I thought they were done. And then that all sort of forgets the awful fumble that Flacco had, that thankfully the ball rolled out of bounds, but it was just a miserable day up to that point. But like to his credit, in a lot of ways, Flacco has that sort of same emotional range as Stefanski, where he's just, you can never really get a good gauge on what he's thinking. And he just stuck with it and kept playing, to his credit.
Which is important.
Yes.
Well, first you touched on, it was like watching the Browns play on the other side. And that's probably the perfect description, because you're exactly right. That Chicago team, and I don't want to say a meltdown, but it kind of was a meltdown because they had opportunities.
Us, what we'd be saying.
A meltdown.
Yes.
They gave it away. The Browns really didn't have any business winning that game yesterday. And once again, I'm sitting here thinking, how many more blows and punches can this team take? Whether it is injuries, whether it is the amount of turnovers, whether it is, I don't know, just anything. It seems like they are able to overcome whatever is thrown at them. And a month ago, we were sitting here saying this team really built different, and they have a chance to win football games, even if things don't go 100% right. And I was saying that when our squad was 70% healthy. I would say we're closer to the 50%. And I guess I'm sitting here doubling down on that statement and saying that they have proven this team is bought in to the coaching staff, to the system, to the guys that they're playing with, that they have a chance to win every game. It doesn't matter about the injuries, I guess, at this point. They're doing enough. They believe in themselves. They are clawing themselves out of double-digit 2-score deficits. It's pretty incredible. And you're right. I think they have more belief and faith in themselves than the fan base does at certain points in time, because as optimistic as you want to be, I don't know how many people were sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, the Browns are going to come back and win this game. I mean, I was not one of them, although I was eerily calm watching the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Like it's another one of those things like, you can, if you want to make it into this, I think you can call this a culture victory. That all the stuff that Kevin Stefanski has been trying to build up for the 4 years he's been here has sort of proven itself out, where, they have this he's so big on empowering players. And it was really interesting to hear Myles Garrett talk about how, the assumption is always, well, Kevin Stefanski does nothing with defense, except Myles Garrett's like, well, he comes over to us and says, what's working? What should we keep doing? He's not talking about Jim Schwartz. He's talking about Kevin Stefanski, because Kevin Stefanski trusts his guys to know what's going on. And I think some of that is the fact that they have a different team than they did last year. Last year, they had so many children running around that they couldn't do that. They have grown ass men on this team that like know how to play football. They know how to be adults, and he can give them more of that. And they take it very seriously. Like we've talked about this with Amari Cooper being somebody who can go and suggest plays. Like that's not a responsibility to be taken lightly, because you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to let your teammates down and just throw stuff out there. So you've got to be right. It makes you work harder in that. And then the fact that you have that little ownership in it, it feels like yours in ways that, that enhance your relationship, not only with what you want to have happen for you, but like what you expect to happen for your teammates, what you do for your teammates to be successful. And they absolutely have that to a point where it's like, to your point, how many guys can they lose? And yet, like this game, Ronnie Hickman played really well as an undrafted rookie. D'Anthony Bell played a ton of snaps at safety. Um, you know, they had Cam Mitchell made that shoestring tackle that was just incredible on Justin Fields. Like those are rookies and second year players that have not gotten a ton of reps. Alex Wright had a couple big plays as a second year guy, and obviously we're talking about defense mostly here. But Cedric Tillman, in as much as he has a lot to learn in terms of the NFL, he's also a giant man who just takes up so much space and catches the football, and he's a problem to bring down. And he's another player that's stepping up. Obviously, David Bell, the big one last week, and it was awesome listening to Alex Van Pelt talk about it. The coaches love David Bell, like absolutely love him, and they were so happy for David Bell getting to score that touchdown. But like these are all guys where like, it's one thing to say next man up, but the Browns are living it every week, and they have to. They don't have a choice. They have to have all these guys make plays, or they are going to lose. And it's been a lot of fun. And obviously, Joe Flacco being the sort of the last guy in the building in some ways, because he was added so late. He's like, it's really interesting to see how he relates to the team, where he talks about it in terms of thanks for having me and sort of letting me be a part of this. And obviously, fans love Joe Flacco. The media fawns over Joe Flacco. And then his teammates are genuinely in awe of him. Like you watch them and the way they deal with him. It's really interesting. He does have sort of an aura within him, even though he's playing very average quarterback, but like there's just a little extra something with him that people are willing to sort of rally around that makes him effective, that makes him work in some of these ways. And the fact that I think him being an even keeled guy, and the fact that, I will continue to argue that the difference between Joe Flacco and DTR is marginal. Like you look at EPA and some of these other measurements, there's very little difference between the two. But the veteran element of that, and having been there and having sort of that credibility, does help him in some of these things. Obviously, playing in some of these games, I think this is his 182nd start now, certainly helps him in some respects, even if his play is infuriating so much at the time. Like his last three games, all of them are the same. They are just a giant roller coaster. It's just a question of when you're going to get your peaks and valleys. And when you're going to want to kill him versus when you celebrate him. The Bears game was the most fascinating because he played so poorly for 3 quarters and then just crushed it in the fourth quarter. I think it was 11 of 13 for 212 yards and a touchdown. Like
wild.
It's just an insane game for him. And like all these things are playing out at the same time in a way that's like, you have national pundits falling in. Now, I always assume this because anytime I listen to whoever Brian Baldinger is talking about in the moment is clearly his favorite team ever. Yes, but he does make you believe in some ways that like he generally just loves the Browns. Chris Sims is another one who's just like unabashedly in love with what the Browns are doing. There's all these people who are just like they just refuse they can't deny, and they're like into this just because they just keep doing it and finding ways to make it work.
Yeah, I would also just like to shout out to David Njoku for his like ultimate glow up of what was the game that he had a million drops in? All the Browns players had the drops
I was
in.
going to say Denver was bad. He had the 2 drops in the end, well, drops, contested drops, whatever you want to call them, against the Broncos. But there have been other games. There may have been other games too, but yeah, there have been a couple where it's just like it was miserable.
Okay, so obviously the impact that he has had over the last couple of weeks, and even really just his leadership seems to be very apparent. And I know that he was also the video of the locker room speech. He got the game ball, obviously, for that performance, and he talked about, it's all about them, and very team rah 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 situation. But he has been someone who has struggled with drops throughout his entire career. And obviously he has been through multiple regimes, and he was part of the 0-16 team.
No.
Or was he the 1-15?
No, he would. No, he was there. He was there.
He was there
both years. 2017.
Yeah,
He was in that
and
draft.
there's not many of them left on this team, but he's been through a lot. He's seen a lot, and it feels like every year with David, it's always, well, this is going to be his year. This is going to be his breakout year. And even us as fans, we've always wanted to see David be a much bigger part of the offense and be that weapon and that threat, like similar, like what you were talking about with Patrick and Travis Kelce, where he's a big bodied guy and he can make the catches. His yards after catch is incredible. And I tweeted this yesterday, but it's so wild to me that he looks so slow and so fast at the same time. Like, I can't figure out what it is about him. He just like glides. It's as if he has like these like skis on, where he's just, I don't know, he's very majestic. He's a majestic creature. And I'm just so happy for him that like this is how it's going. And I really hope that like this chemistry that him and Joe have together, like we see this throughout the next few games, because like, once again, our offense, the weapons that we have, without having Nick Chubb, without having that monster run game, like we are going to need David to kind of be that person that's going to be able to catch some of those short passes and run and get these additional yards. And honestly, like shout out to all the receiving core yesterday for like stepping up and making big plays. I mean, Amari, again, typically always is reliable. You had Elijah Moore making big plays. My guy, Marquise Goodwin.
Yes.
Was it a 60-yard catch?
He had 2 huge plays. The one you're talking about is 57, but he had another big play in that game.
I mean, Pete, I was so happy after that. Just obviously all the things he's also been through this year with the injury, the concussion, the blood clots at the beginning of the season. I don't know. I mean, to me, like that's just what feels special about this. We were talking about people needing to step up, and we have guys that are able and that are willing. And I was so inspired that I ended up purchasing a youth jersey of David Njoku today, because little dude Maddox had asked for a David Njoku jersey at the beginning of the season, or sorry, at the beginning of his Christmas list. And David was kind of dropping the ball, and I was like, do I really want to buy this jersey for a guy that can't catch a football? And then today I was like, you know what? David deserves this. He's earned this jersey purchase for my son. So he's going to be pumped, but I'm really, really happy for him and the way that he has been playing.
Yes. So Kevin Stefanski called David Njoku one of the greatest teammates he's ever seen, which is obviously high praise. Njoku, was inspired by what he saw from Jarvis Landry, and decided that when Landry left, that's what he wanted to become. He wanted to be that guy. And the Browns obviously bet on Njoku, and you can argue that he hadn't proven it enough to warrant his contract. I would say that with Njoku, he's too big, too strong, too fast. It was going to happen eventually. There's just too much there. And like I said earlier, what really set him apart in this game is his intelligence. 2 of the biggest plays in this game where he was just really smart and understood what he was looking at, understood the situation, and made plays. And in these past 2 weeks, he's got, I think it's 16 catches for 195 yards and 3 touchdowns. So now he's set career highs in receptions, yards, and touchdowns in the season with 3 regular season games left to go. Obviously, he would have passed this mark last year, but he missed time with a high ankle sprain. But like, he makes it very easy to root for him. The Browns feel he's a critical component in their locker room and being a valuable leader and everything else. And I believe somebody on this podcast declared that the Browns needed somebody to be a playmaker on this team. And when the Browns needed him the most, these past two games, they had to have somebody do it. He came up big and answered the bell and was a major reason why they won the game. He had 101 yards, I think, in this game in all. I think 80 of them were in the fourth quarter, and two on the 60 some were on those two plays back to those two plays on the last drive. And like I mentioned earlier, Marquise Goodwin had two big plays. Obviously, the 57-yarder was huge, but on the first play of the drive, where Njoku got the ball for 31 yards, Marquise Goodwin was lined up in the slot, and all they had him do was just fly off the ball as fast as he could, and he pulled a corner and safety out of the way with him, clearing out space for Njoku to be open in the flat. Nobody widened out with him. He had all kinds of room to run up the field. And obviously, he gained 31 yards and tried to leap over a defender who leaped with him and went nowhere. But like, that was Marquise Goodwin made a huge impact on that play in addition to the 57-yard play. So that was great for him. And just the last play, the one that set up the game-winning field goal, like, that's a simple drag route, and Njoku recognizes where the space on the field is. He's being covered by a defensive tackle for some reason, and he just goes to where the space is, and Flacco realizes where the space is and just sort of throws it up to him. And then again, it's not how the play is designed. It's just understanding the situation and going to where you're going to be able to make a play. He goes up and high points it. He makes a guy miss, because I can't think of a play where Njoku's ever been tackled by the first guy. It's always somebody else or a group of guys. Like, he's always going to make somebody miss, and goes way up the sideline. And suddenly you're like, okay, I guess we're good then. Like, that was, it was weird how easy that felt in the moment, that like, because that play was crazy. 3rd and 15, the Bears were in a great spot. They sent pressure. It looked like it was going to get there. Flacco just sort of leaves the ball out there, and Njoku just does the rest. It was just insanely difficult and so easy at the same time, in a way that, like, other teams do this. This is one of those things that we have not gotten accustomed to, that it can just be that simple. It always has to feel like we are grinding out every yard.
Yes.
Especially late in the game. It was just like, oh, I guess we're in field goal range. All right. I guess we can win this one.
It would be great not to be playing from behind and having to make these heroic efforts to win football games. And also to not have it come down to a Hail Mary. Like, please and thank you.
Yeah. Oh, wow. But this is what makes the game frustrating, is because, like, coming into this game, I felt like the Browns defense had a massive advantage, even with all the injuries. Justin Fields just is not a good matchup for what the Browns do. He wants to hold on to the ball. He wants to be able to sort of scan the field and see what's out there. And that is a nightmare against the Browns defense. And they basically did a lot of what they did in 2021 when they destroyed the Bears in historic fashion. Fields was certainly better in this game and made a couple of just tremendous plays, but like, you keep him under pressure, he's going to give you opportunities, and he did. And whether it was the Bears or the Browns, no one could catch the ball. But like, that kept causing him problems and kept giving them opportunities and kept allowing them. And I think they had 8 3-and-outs in this one. Like, this is the game where I felt the Browns defense was in really good shape, a really good matchup to do well. And that's what makes this game so frustrating, is like 14 points off turnovers.
Right.
Again. And again, it results in having to come back from down 17-7 in a game where, if you just don't give the ball away,
right,
the Browns defense cruises for the most part. Maybe eventually the Bears make a play, but it's just, they had one drive that really got them anywhere, and they got a field goal out of it. So within that, that process of understanding the Browns defense is in really good shape, there always felt like a chance that the Browns were going to be able to come back. It was just they were so futile in what they were doing offensively, and there were so many things going wrong. Nobody could protect well effectively with Montez Sweat, who took over the game in a lot of ways. But what changed it? And we talk about, well, where are the adjustments? Where are the adjustments? Like these are the adjustments the Browns made are the type that you don't necessarily notice. So what we saw was the Browns started running play action concepts. And yes, the fake is important, but it was really about the protection scheme. So they ran sort of a fake that involves a pulling guard, backside guard, going out to kick out that backside end, which if you watch the Jacksonville Jaguars game, the Browns stopped running play action because the Jags kept sending that backside pressure. They didn't really have an answer for it. Joe Flacco turned around once, sort of got hit throwing the ball, and the Browns were like, well, we're not doing that anymore because the Jags kept sending that backside pressure. So in this situation, you saw multiple plays where the Browns send that backside guard, which at the very least is going to force that end to now widen out, giving Flacco space. Meanwhile, the left side of the line is sort of pushing everything out left, which leaves this big gaping hole in the middle. So Flacco now has space to step up in the pocket. And that's when you saw the Marquise Goodwin throw. That's when you saw some of the other things that opened up because they weren't just running standard, a normal pass protection where you were then asking James Hudson III to futilely try to block Montez Sweat, which just wasn't happening. And I don't, that's regardless of who gets the credit for that, those are those little adjustments, that problem solving that really allowed the Browns to unlock the fourth quarter. I also think some of that is the Bears just started doing some dumb shit, but like covering David Njoku with a defensive tackle. I can only imagine what the reaction would have been had the Browns done that and given up the potential game-winning play, because like Siaki Ika was out in coverage, which did happen. He was out in coverage at one point. And fortunately, the Browns were able to take advantage. But like, I really, from a football nerdy sort of standpoint, I really enjoyed watching this from a problem-solving standpoint, having no offense for three quarters. It was like 62 yards of total offense. And I think 10 yards in the third quarter to then they figured it out and opened the whole thing up. And look, there were some spectacular plays. There's no getting around that. You had to have those, but the coaching staff, those adjustments allowed those plays to happen, which is what you want. Like that's this working as intended.
Yeah, I agree. Go Cavs. For you to catch that.
Well, listen,
the offensive line terrifies me moving forward. I mean, I'm going to say that obviously with the situation that they were dealt with in game and just Wyatt Teller really being the only starter in that game, I don't know what else I could have expected from them. It was sloppy. It was something that clearly needs to be cleaned up. The run game seems to be non-existent. I don't know if that's going to change these next couple of games, but it's rough, Pete. It's real rough.
The hope is one, you get Bitonio and Posick back.
I really hope so. But when you hear like a back locking up as someone who is married to a person that has back issues, it's terrifying to think about.
Yeah, so you lay on the floor for like a day or two, and then you get up and you're good, and you go out there and you go do it. What's funny is he played really well with the blacked up back until he couldn't do it anymore.
I can't.
But the weirder one to me is Posick. Like you just don't know with that pinched nerve type of action and the stinger what's going to happen with that. Now, some of that Nick Harris could not have asked for a worse matchup for him than Andrew Billings, who has like 50 pounds on him and just could physically dominate him. Nick Harris is really built well to be a mobile blocker. And like on that one screen they tried to run where he got called for a hold, debatable if it was holding, like that is him doing what he's supposed to do. And that play worked, except it got called back. So that's a bad matchup for him. I think some of the hope is based on the fact that the Browns may not face a front quite that impactful the rest of the way, particularly with the incredibly bad news for the Bengals that DJ Reader's out for the year. Houston will have guys like that's certainly a reason to be worried. I agree with you. I think the running game is going to be it's going to be underwhelming. It's going to be frustrating, and anything you get out of that's going to be like a nice, pleasant surprise, as opposed to, hey, this is what we do. I'm hopeful that
When it seems like every positive run we have gets called back for a hold. Like that's just what it feels like at this point.
yeah,
And I know that comes with the offensive line, not getting reps together, not getting I don't know. They gotta figure some stuff out. And then also, like, not to mention, we're going from Christmas Eve Houston and turning around and playing
yeah.
4 days later. That is what really, really like who's going to be playing in that game on Thursday? Because like at this rate, I am terrified.
Yeah. Look, the Browns play super quickly, back-to-back games. I mean, like the best news of today was no one else got injured. Like that was great.
Yeah.
That was almost as good as the win.
There's no one left to get injured.
Yeah. Like it basically going, hey, yep, everybody's day to day. It's like, okay, we can work with that. They, in some weird way that like the guys they've been without, you're hoping that they will be, one, able to come back, and two, have rested in some ways and gotten sort of beyond whatever injury they're dealing with, like Juan Thornhill's calf. You're hoping that sort of the rest of him also recovered. So when he's back, like that's going to help him. Or Ethan Posick being out, like the rest of him will have healed a little bit, even if he's waiting for the stinger. Or Batonio not playing in that game helps him. And because he had only practiced on Friday, that maybe that will help him a little bit. I mean, they need those three interior linemen to work. The tackle play is what it is. It's just going to be bad. But if those three guys inside can work, they can at least function. Again, it's a question of what are you going to get in the running game, because they keep asking tackles they keep needing the tackles to function, and they can't. But there may be some other opportunities to create in there, or at least just allow Flacco and the passing game to keep operating in a way that will at least allow them to be competitive. Defensively, it's going to be interesting. I think Houston certainly, assuming CJ Stroud is playing, is certainly a more difficult matchup for the Browns than, say, the Bears were. And it's on the road. The defense has not traveled particularly well. That's obviously its own concern. It's a big test for them. It's a big opportunity for them to sort of be able to finally shed themselves of this thing that they've been dealing with, that they have not played well on the road. They are 7-1 at home. And 2-4 on the road. Like they are clearly,
particularly the defense too.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the difference between, I don't even know if it's accurate anymore, but at one point it was like 10 points per game at home versus 30 on the road.
Yeah, it's wild.
So, those are challenges they have to now find ways to address. And, it's tough. And like, I've heard like Joel Batonio talk about this. I think in a lot of ways, Kevin Stefanski being so unrelenting in his message of just go 1-0 this week has been a huge relief to them, because just what you're doing right now, going, well, how are they going to play Sunday and then Thursday? It's natural. That's what most people would do. But like, and I think even earlier in the season, when you're sitting there going, oh, Deshaun Watson's done for the year, or Nick Chubb's done for the year, how are we going to get through 17 or 15 more games, or Watson, 9 more games or whatever it is. And they have sort of bought into this thing of all we've got to do is figure out this 1 week and then we'll move on to the next one. And they've gotten to a point where they're now incredibly 9-5. And there are some people who are, always going to be sitting there going, well, we could be 10-4 if we don't lose the Seahawks game. It's been a remarkable ride, to say the least, with everything they've been doing.
Yeah, a ride that like we should just enjoy.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, and I've been able to do this. Like,
who would have thought? Like, would you have okay, first of all, there were people, maybe me included, that didn't even think we would be at 9-5 with what we projected our starters to be, like at this point in time.
No, you're right. This to me was when the Browns were supposed to kick. Like we were supposed to be in the midst of kicking. The Bears were going to be an easy game.
Right.
The Texans were going to be a relatively easy matchup. And if the Browns were healthy, I would say the Browns would dominate this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they are continue to be ahead of schedule in a lot of ways. And, they have 6 games against teams with at least, well, I think it's down to 5 now because the Steelers lost. 5 games against teams with winning records.
Yeah.
That is obviously been incredible. And what's funny to me is like I saw, somebody was posting Coach of the Year odds, and other than D'Amico Ryans, who the Browns will play this week, and like Dan Campbell for the Lions, and their cake schedule, they've played nobody. Everybody else that's like ahead of Kevin Stefanski in the odds or is even with them, the Browns have beaten. So Kyle Shanahan, the Browns beat them. Shane Steichen with the Colts, the Browns beat them. Zach Taylor for the Bengals, the Browns beat them. Obviously, they will play again. And then John Harbaugh and the Ravens, the Browns split with them. But obviously, it was in dramatic fashion that the Browns were able to come back and win that game in sort of difficult circumstances and everything else. I don't expect Kevin Stefanski is going to win this award, just how the award works. But it's been a crazy ride in terms of like all the things you would look for and say, well, if if they beat the Texans, he will have beaten basically everybody else that's up for that award with a team full of spare parts.
Yeah.
And this has been a better coaching. Like 2020 was an incredible year, in a lot of ways, but this will have been a better coaching job than that was, in terms of sort of awards and that stuff.
Well, I would also just say I'm going to enjoy this solely for the fact that there are other fan bases that are jealous of what is happening being a Cleveland Browns fan. And that is something that, quite frankly, we have not experienced, not even in 2020, when we had the playoff run, when we had the winning record. We've seen it from even some media members that are tweeting about Kevin Stefanski and this team, and why isn't this team doing that? Why aren't they able to do things like that? And even our foes over in Pittsburgh, who right now are just talk about implosion. There are clips of their players giving up on plays. I mean, that is something that we have been privy to as fans of this football team. And so for me, like, regardless of where the season ends up in totality, we are at a moment in time where we have a really good record with a team who has just been gutted with injuries, and not even like recent injuries. These are injuries that we've had to endure at the beginning of the season. And so that's not lost on me. And I know it's really hard to, it's really easy, I guess, to get caught up in the prisoner of the moment and be mad in the moment or be mad about something. But guys, just reflect on that. Like, this is something that we've been asking for, we've been waiting for. I don't care how it comes. I don't care how these wins come. I don't care if it is by the luck of a call going our way. I don't care if it is a guy dropping a Hail Mary pass that he probably should have caught. Like, these things haven't fallen for us. So I'm just going to accept them, and I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of this regular season, and we'll go from there, Pete.
Well, I think the players are making it easy to do that. I think the players are the ones who sort of make this easy to enjoy, because so many different players are playing, and you're seeing like a different player every week sort of get his moment in the sun and all these other things. And there's this element of just being scrappy to the very end. They have stolen the Steelers' identity. Just right out from under them. To your point, like, various wide receivers just not trying on plays, George Pickens being the latest. I continue to think
they all want to fire Tomlin like immediately. They are like, the fans are, and I work with a lot of them. They've been mad at Tomlin because he hasn't been able to win a playoff game. But now, obviously, they are seeing what is happening to us and the wins that we are getting, and them obviously not having good quarterback play and losing, and then seeing receivers not try.
Yeah.
And they're all out.
Watch.
They are done. The locker room is lost.
Well, I do think the locker room is done as far as this year goes. I think Tomlin can get it back, but I don't think that team is going to look the same as it does next year. I don't think they can keep all those guys there, the guys who have just basically quit
Yeah.
on them. But I also think they're going to lose. They're running out of those glue guys. Like, I don't think Cameron Hayward's going to play another year. I can't imagine he's going to do it one more year. I think he's going to retire. And that's one of their big guys. They've got certainly TJ Watt still there, Alex Highsmith still there, Minka Fitzpatrick still there. But like, they are running out of those guys that they've had that just keep order and keep people that culture going. And now you've got guys who are sort of less like, I'm going to play when I feel like it. And I think they're going to have to shake up that roster in some way, unless they do plan to get rid of Tomlin, which I think it would be insane. But who am I to argue if the Steelers want to do something stupid?
Yeah. Same. Please,
so,
by all means.
Yeah.
Start over.
but all the things that the Steelers used to do to the Browns, like this game yesterday is a perfect example. That would be a Browns Steelers game that the Browns lose.
Right.
The Bears played like that. The Browns play harder, longer, and they just figure it out. And that's what the Steelers had done for years and years and years, even when the Browns thought they had more talent. I think even the record 7-7 is sort of overachieving relative to what the Steelers have. But I understand that they have a very entitled fan base for all the reasons that you would think they would, because they've been so good. They expect to be good. And I'll be curious to see how it works out. But like, I would like to hope that, the Browns fans can sort of really enjoy that part of this, that the Browns are winning. The Browns are doing a lot of things that they're sort of overachieving in some ways, even though they do have legitimate talent in a lot of places. The amount of guys they've lost has just become absurd, which is why you have to be able to just look at this as a game at a time and be like, okay, they got that one. Now just figure it out and we'll see where it goes. How that's going to work this next game, I don't know. But they crushed it at home against the Jaguars, who, again, the Jaguars were 8-3 and then played 3 AFC North teams, and now they're 8-6. And now they're in danger. Like, this is a huge game for the Texans because they may have a shot to take the division in there. And now the Browns, math is certainly not in their favor, but they are still alive for the division. If the Ravens fall apart, the Ravens play a couple of difficult teams. They've got to play the 49ers and the Dolphins, and one other team who I don't think is very good. But if the Browns somehow went out, and who knows, they may have a shot at it. And if not, then they could end up being a ridiculous, 12-5 in that world if they were to win out. But either they fall short of that and just get to the 10-7. We've all been, that's been the goal. I think it will be a substantial achievement for this team, and certainly something to build on going forward. Because ultimately, when we get out of this season, and obviously there's a lot of repairing to do in terms of surgeries and everything else, the amount of players that are still on this team, those young guys who have played, are going to have a ton of experience going into next year, and they're not going to be unproven rookies. They're going to be guys who have played. So if they need to come in, it will be less of a shock to the system, and they'll just be like, okay, we've got more guys that can come in and make plays, which will be huge and may allow them to do some things that protect some of their players a little bit more, which would be great. But it's going to be a fascinating look to see. Browns have 2 games left on the road. They've got the 1 division game left. They've got 1 more at home. They could finish 8-1 at home, which would be insane, against a Jets team who I don't know if they have any interest in showing up to that game. So that's where we're at. 9-5 feels really, really good despite everything. And I just cannot wait to see what happens. Even as there's a part of you that's sort of like, can't wait to see it. And then it's also terrified that somebody else is going to get hurt and you just want to get through safely.
I know. Same. But listen, we got to believe, because they keep figuring it out.
Well, here's the thing. Whether we do or not, they do. They absolutely do.
It's all that matters.
Believe to the very end. It was funny watching people crush Greg Newsome for celebrating when they were down 10
on the broadcast.
And he was right. He knew all along. Who was to doubt him? They came back and won. But also, people seem to ignore the fact that, like, they are told, like, one, I don't think Greg Newsome particularly needs a whole lot of prodding to celebrate, but they are coached to do that. Like, Chip Schwartz, guys. And look, if it works for them, I'm not gonna argue with it, even if I understand why some fans would be sort of frustrated by the optics of it. But like,
Doing it all year. This is like
yes,
this is their identity. Like this is who they are.
and it's working for them.
It
It's
is.
been awesome. Last thing I would touch on was just the last thing I heard from Kevin Stefanski today is just an impassioned speech about Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett has obviously been super supportive of Kevin Stefanski in recent weeks, talking about him. Kevin Stefanski was talking about why Myles Garrett should be Defensive Player of the Year and everything he's doing. Here's my thing. Don't tell me that don't make the case that Myles Garrett should be Defensive Player of the Year. Make the case that Myles Garrett should be your MVP. He should be the MVP of the league. It's a weird year in terms of the MVP. You just make that argument. Listen, I don't know if a single other player on this defense is going to be a Pro Bowler or anything else, and all that. I think Myles Garrett might be the only one, and they're the number one defense in the league, which should enhance his value. But argue for the thing the thing you may not be able to get, and then settle for the Defensive Player of the Year. You keep hyping him up for MVP, and then it just becomes, well, he can't be MVP, but we can give him Defensive Player of the Year, and then he just finally gets the award he's been so waiting and deserving of getting.
He deserves it. He deserves it. I hope he gets it. I really hope he gets it. I feel like he's not going to get it just because he's a Cleveland Brown. I don't know. He deserves it.
Well, last year he should have gotten it, and there were people who argue that he shouldn't. No, he absolutely deserved it last year. But the Browns' record was crap.
I was gonna say the fact that the Browns actually have a record to go with it.
That's the ultimate thing. Like, I don't know how many people. I mean, if we go by the broadcast, they don't know who a lot of players are on this team in a given week, despite the fact that some of them have now watched the team 3 times. It's fascinating that like they're in some ways sort of anonymous. Other than him, and if that's all you're going on, and that's both sides of the ball at this point, they're so depleted that Myles Garrett has to play at a super high level to keep them competitive, and he's doing that. And they're 9-5, and the one it's those JJ Watt teams. Like he kept winning Defensive Player of the Year because he was the dude.
Right.
There's no question who the guy is on this team. That's to me, I think that's. If you're arguing in terms of value, there's no way to get around it. And then if you argue in terms of production, he's still the best pass rusher in football. If you love the sacks, he made a couple of big plays against the run yesterday, but just he is so special at this and what he's doing right now. I do hope he gets through. I think he's 13 and a half or 14 sacks. I desperately do want him to get to 16 somehow, some way, because that would tie him with Reggie White for 3 years of 16 sacks in a season. I think he would be the only other player in NFL history to do that. Anytime you can be in the conversation with Reggie White, you're doing good. So I do hope he can get that, but just phenomenal football player and certainly deserves to get that award. So I should have dropped this at the beginning of the show. If you want to support us, like, subscribe, comment, all those good things help us in the sort of algorithm. We will keep plugging away. Hopefully, we will be back next week. However, it will be me. One of us is going on a well-deserved vacation for Christmas, and then that 5-day slate. So I will be back. Bree will be on a vacation.
So Pete, I'll be listening. Don't let me down. Don't ghost me like I ghosted you.
So yeah, I mean, so she'll be off for that week, but we will have podcasts. We'll continue to talk about it. It should be good. So we'll see what happens, and all that. But as always, thanks for listening. Yeah, that's it.